Good evening, everyone. Welcome to IKG's Wisdom Wednesday. I am your coordinator and present and facilitator for the evening, Ajwa, and I'm so happy and thankful that you all are able to join us for yet another presentation. So as you all are coming into the chat, coming into the room, I would like to ask that you let us know in the chat where you are from. So we just get to feel for who all is in the audience and where we are all checking in from. Also, as you all are coming in and throughout the presentation, if you have specific questions for our presenter, we're going to ask that you place those questions in the Q&A box, which you will find right next to your chat box. But before we get started, I want to again thank you all for coming out to IKG's Wisdom Wednesday. Wisdom Wednesday is a free monthly lecture series that we now have online. We've been having them in person for over 10 years here in Washington, D.C., but we started having them online. And now we are able to extend this wonderful opportunity to our entire family globally. And we're very thankful for that. So we host presenters who speak on various topics related to African-American history and culture, politics, spirituality, education, finance, finances. So a array of topics that are meant to help us as a Black community. So tonight will be no different. And before we get into tonight's program, we just want to shout out people checking in. We have folks coming in from New York and California. Of course, Maryland. We have Georgia in the house. Florida's in the house. Welcome, welcome. Of course, DC is always representing. Yes, we have someone from Accra, Ghana. All right, Ghana. Yes, yes. Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you for joining us. Bowie, Maryland. Camp Springs, Maryland. Okay, Boston. We got Boston in the house. Brooklyn, New York. Okay, Brooklyn, stand up. Orangeburg, South Carolina. Philadelphia, Georgia. Georgia's in here heavy tonight. Inglewood, California. Thank you. So keep it coming in the chat. The chat is how we communicate throughout the presentation, just as a way for us to engage as we're listening in. And before I introduce tonight's speaker, I do want to invite you all to check out the IKG website, ikgculturalresourcecenter.com, where you can learn more about various events that IKG hosts, including the Egypt on the Potomac field trip. That season has begun, and we have a field trip coming up July 8th, and we have them going up all the way through November. So if you go to the IKG website, you will be able to find out more dates and sign up for those field trips if you're in the Washington, D.C. area. We will place a link for the website in the chat momentarily. So on to tonight's program. We are very pleased to have with us tonight Nana Atei Asiedu, or Dr. Ometha Lewis Jack, who will be speaking on mental and emotional letting go, a difficult executive functioning process. She writes, executive functioning is the most challenging of human behaviors, but is deemed to be essential to life as we live on planet Earth. It is often defined as the complex process by which an individual goes about performing a novel problem-solving task from its inception to its completion. It involves a group of important skills that impacts every area of life: home, work, school, social situations. One's executive functioning include processes such as paying attention, organizing, and planning, starting tasks and staying focused on them, managing emotions, and keeping track of what you are doing. A complex task that requires effective executive functioning is mental and emotional letting go, which some refer to as the act of forgiving or just simply letting go. Tonight's workshop will outline the steps and skills necessary for letting go, how that process is manifested in our behaviors when we do not let go, the challenges it brings, and what are some of the solutions that involves executive functioning that enables one to engage in the process of letting go. You will be able to examine the consequences of holding on to emotional baggage and be able to make informed decisions as to whether or not one should let go. And a little bit about our presenter. Nana Atei Asiedu, also known as Dr. Ometha Lewis Jack, Ph.D., is a trained and graduated priestess or healer in the Akan traditional spiritual system under the guidance of Okomfahima Nana Akuya Amwaba Bochwe I. Nana Asiedu is a second lieutenant of the Nana Asiedu Shrine in Maryland. She is a licensed clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist and professor of psychology in the clinical psychology graduate program at Howard University. She is also the chair of the psychology department at Bowie State University. She has been able to incorporate traditional African principles and healing practices into her teachings and therapeutic work. In 2016, Nana Atei Asiedu was installed as Nkobia of the Nana Asiedu Shrine in Larteh, Ghana, West Africa. Her position is to ensure that the rich traditional African principles that we were raised by continues to be a driving force in the developmental lives of our children and communities. So everyone in the chat, please join me in welcoming Nana Dr. Asiedu. Nana, welcome.
Greetings, good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here and anxious too.
Yes, we are excited for your presentation, and I am going to go off screen and let you do your thing. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Well, we're in for a roller coaster ride because this is a difficult, I'm going to share my screen. This is a difficult process for anybody, letting go. And I'm sure everyone in here have had some issues with being able to let go of something. So as I talk about letting go, I want you to think about a situation that
Nana, click resume slideshow.
Click on
resume slideshow
yeah.
in the gray box on your slide.
Yeah.
So on your, yes, go down and click resume slideshow.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to go back. Right. Mental and emotional letting go, how easy it is. You know, people say all the time, oh, you need to let go, you need to let go. And those of us who hold on to things, and I'm included myself, know how difficult a process it is. And what happens when you don't let go, that's what we're going to talk about today. And what happens when you do let go. So first, I want to show a short video on anger and letting go. Some of you may have seen this already. Think about the snake. Think about yourself in that position.
I want to share with you a powerful story about a snake and a saw. Before you question what a snake and a saw has to do with your life, it is about much more than a snake and a saw. It's about what happens to us when we react in anger. It's about what happens to us when we hold on to resentment and when we don't let go of negative emotions. It's about what can happen to us when we want negative things to happen to others. So the story is this. One night after closing time, a snake found its way inside a home improvement store. As the snake slithered around, it clipped itself on a handsaw. It was lying on the ground. Thinking the saw was a threat, the snake instantly snapped around and bit the saw. Of course, this caused much more damage, with the snake cutting inside its mouth. Not understanding what was happening and thinking the saw was an enemy, the snake wrapped its long body around the saw, attempting to suffocate. Of course, the snake didn't do any damage to the saw. Instead, ended up being killed by the sharp blade of the saw. The snake ended up being killed by its own anger, by its own reaction to something it thought was out to get it. There's a powerful message here. Often we react in anger when we think others have hurt us, or when we assume that others are out to get us. We react when we don't need to. We hold on to resentment, and sometimes we hope the other gets hurt, but in doing so, we only end up hurting ourselves. The negative energy we carry around when we hold on to these resentments and negative feelings only makes us suffer. Never the person we might want to suffer. When we react in anger rather than with compassion, no one will leave us. When we snap back, it is always better to ignore negativity. It's always better to let go of negative feelings toward others. If someone else is wrong, rather than maybe we should try to understand where that person is coming from. Show some compassion. Maybe they are having a bad day. Maybe all of their days. When we look at things from a new perspective, it's much easier to do. Leaving all negative energy behind, holding on there's nothing good for our future. We must let go. We must move on because the anger consumes and ruins the life. Don't react. Stay. Show them. Don't hold it. Rather focus on creating the best life we can for ourselves.
So I'm hoping that this evokes some feelings, some thoughts. I'd ask you to write it down, put it in the chat if there's any questions around this so we can talk about it later. So before we get into letting go, I have to talk about the neurology part, the important areas of the brain that's involved in this process. So we're going to talk about the memory system, right? In the brain, we have several structures that are involved in memory, but the two main structures are the hippocampus and the amygdala, spelled A-M-Y-G-D-A-L-A. The hippocampus is, think about it as your big video system where everything you experience kind of goes in a filing cabinet and it's there to bring forward as we need, to remember things as we need. That's the hippocampus. But it works in concert with the amygdala, which is an almond-shaped structure in the brain's temporal lobe, which is behind your ears, right? And the amygdala attaches emotional significance to memories. So you always hear people say, I may not remember what was said, but I remember how it made me feel. That's the amygdala at work. It attaches emotions to anything that happens, to memories. So this is particularly important because strong emotional memories, like those associated with shame, joy, love, grief, are difficult to forget because the amygdala makes sure that you remember how you feel. So someone may bring up the situation and say, do you remember such and such? And you may not remember the exact words, who said what, but you remember what you felt at the time that experience was happening. And that's the amygdala. And that's going to be very important for what we're going to be talking about. So the reviewed research suggests that the amygdala, in combination with the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex, which is the area just behind your forehead, plays an important role in the retrieval of memories for emotional events. Okay. So we're going to talk about emotional memory, also known as affective memory, right? And that's the shorthand for denoting the memory of experiences that evoked an emotional reaction. It is most commonly used to refer to the ability to consciously remember aspects of those experiences. In other words, the term is used to describe the effects of emotion on episodic memory. So something happens, you have a visual representation of what happens, you remember the words, but you also remember, which is very important, how you felt at that time. So from a neurological standpoint, emotional events are easier to remember because they activate your amygdala and hippocampus at almost the same time. So as you are experiencing the event, the emotions are there and they're stored. The emotions are well stored along with the memory. So it's hard to remember the experience without the feelings coming up at the same time, because they work in concert in the brain, they work together. So the emotion-focused amygdala helps the hippocampus store memories more effectively, resulting in stronger memories. So once you have the emotional piece, that memory is solidified. So you would tend to remember that thing more because it made you feel something. And your amygdala is at work storing those emotions. So there are many things that happen that you may not remember how what was said, exactly the exact words, but that emotion was there. And the emotion, because of how effective it was, sometimes forces people to add things that really did not happen. So if you were angry, you would remember the person saying certain things that they may not have said, right? So, for example, when your brain recognizes a similar situation to one that is stored in your memory, it brings up these same feelings that are attached. So if something happens and it's similar to something that you had experienced before, now you're experiencing it even more because those feelings kind of multiply tenfold, right? So the stronger your memory, whether it is associated with happiness, fear, curiosity, whatever it is, the stronger the emotional response will be if you find yourself in a similar situation. Emotional memory can also refer to how an object, event, or even a person can make us feel by triggering an existing memory that has emotional significance. For example, you might instantly take a liking to someone at a party because their perfume or aftershave is the same as that of your significant other. And just experiencing that will bring up memories of a time when, you know, the situation was good and you were intimate, and it would bring up happy memories. Also, on the other hand, you instantly may not like someone. How often we see someone and we immediately turn off because it reminds you of a negative event that now you are associating that person who you don't know at all, you're associating that person with. So the amygdala plays this important role in that it attaches emotions to situations that have gone and situations that are coming up that you may not even expect, but the feeling, and you get this gut, we talk about this feeling in our gut, and we just got this feeling, and this feeling is negative, and we haven't even experienced the person before, but we had an experience in the past, which the amygdala stored and brings it up again and again and again. So I want you to think about these brain structures working and why it's so difficult, and we talk about why it's so difficult to let things go when we have these emotions at work all the time. Okay. So brain imaging studies have shown that when this the amygdala is activated, right, it boosts memory encoding, it enhances your attention, it enhances your perception, and can help memory retention by triggering the release of stress hormones. So you know how we say stress skills? Well, if you're remembering something and the emotions are coming with it, your system starts to react, and that is what PTSD is like. The system starts to react as if the thing is happening. So now you're under stress. You start producing these stress hormones like cortisol. And basically, we talk about increase in adrenaline, increase in cortisol. So your system gets ready for war. Your blood pressure increases, your breathing increases, you start sweating, you start, getting ready for fight or flight. And a lot of times it's fight because of something that the amygdala brings up again that you thought you had let go, but you didn't. So it's not an easy process when people say, oh, just let it go. It's a process that the brain has to go through to get there. And we'll talk about all the things that are involved in getting there. So in summary, choosing to forget something is going to take a lot more mental effort than trying to remember it. It's going to take a lot of effort to forget. And do we really forget? People say forgive and forget. Do we really forget? No, it's very difficult unless you have amnesia. So we're going to talk about just the process now of letting go. What does it involve, right? For different people, it's different things, right? But letting go involves giving up control sometimes over people, places, and things. We can control what we do, sometimes what we say, how we behave, but we can't control other people, right? So understanding that you have to let it go is giving up that kind of control. Some people say, let go and let God, right? Because we know that's a difficult brain process. It would take divine intervention to really let it go. Okay? What is letting go? Sometimes it's throwing away or giving away what is no longer needed or wanted in a physical sense, right? It's accepting that you may not have the power to change a situation, so you have to let it go. It involves surrendering sometimes, and people see surrendering as giving up, but it's not giving up everything. It's giving up that situation or that thing because it's out of your control. But letting go can also involve grieving, where you allow yourself to shed, cry, rant, rave, do whatever, and get it out of your system, release that energy. Letting go also involves faith that things are going to be okay, that something greater than yourself is going to step in and help you to do stuff. It involves trusting others to do their part and also for you to do your part. And also for many people, letting go involves forgiveness, which we will talk about a little bit later on too. It's a very heavy thing. So we hold on to stuff because we're human beings and we have this emotional memory and we have these things that play in our head, and different situations bring up things and it's hard to forget. But when we hold on to that energy, it can lead to several things, several mental and emotional disorders, right? So it's an energy that creates anger and aggression. Think about a situation where you got really mad at someone, they hurt your feelings, they said something about you, they hurt you in a way that cut to the soul, right? And when you think about that person, you think about that thing, you go back to that angry feeling, that feeling in your gut, that sometimes could also lead to aggression. Inability to let go leads to depression, because now you may not have the resources necessary to deal with whatever that situation is. You can't change it. You feel helpless and you get depressed, or you may get anxious. Right? Sometimes not being able to let go forces you to be dependent on other people for stuff. So you develop what is called a dependent personality disorder. One of the big ones is the post-traumatic stress disorder. Think about that feedback loop where you're re-experiencing the event over and over and over. You're having nightmares about it, you're dreaming about it, you're having issues, you try to avoid the situation, and it brings on stress. And that's what post-traumatic stress disorder is, that being stuck in that feedback loop that keeps taking you back to the same place, re-experiencing the event over and over because it's difficult to let it go. Sometimes it leads to phobias, being fearful of situations that situation reminds you of. So you try now to avoid it and not having to deal with it at all. Right? And for some people, in dealing with it, it can also lead to addiction and substance use disorders. I can't forget it, so I'm going to smoke it, I'm going to drink it, I'm going to try to forget it in some way, drug to it, so that I wouldn't have to deal with it. So the inability to let go, once you hold on to this stuff, can lead to several illnesses, and sometimes a lot of physical illnesses that people take medications for things that they don't need because they're holding on to something that should have let go, a long time ago. And people hold grudges for years. Okay. So when is it difficult to let go? These are just examples of situations when it's difficult to let go, when it involves people. When someone hurts your feelings or your pride, belittles you or shames you consistently or in front of other people, when they made you feel horrible, and you hold on to that, and every time you see them, you remember how they made you feel, it's difficult to let that kind of stuff go, because again, when you think about a situation or somebody reminds you of that situation, those feelings come up and you feel it in your gut, you feel it in your back, sometimes you feel it in your neck and shoulders, you get headaches, that is holding on to energy. It's holding on to bad energy, right? It's difficult to let go when your relationships have gone bad, especially when you're heartbroken, when someone has broken your heart, they have cheated on you, they have abused you in some way that you think that you can't get back from. Victims of domestic violence, it's also very difficult to let go of that, because you remember the pain, physical, emotional, spiritual, and everything else that was afflicted on you. Okay? And physical or emotional pain. So what does that look like in terms of people's behavior, right? When it's difficult to let go of people, you're not flexible with people, right? When certain people are around, you get paranoid. You think that people are out to hurt you, that, if it happened once, it will happen twice and 3 times. It may be happening again. So you limit yourself. So that you limit yourself to specific people, places, and things. You don't go around the people that may remind you of the thing or the places where something may happen. So you're basically denying yourself life. When you don't let go, especially of people, you tend to judge people in the negative without having facts. And, sometimes I meet people who I've never seen before, met before, but somehow you take an instant dislike because just something in their spirit, something in their demeanor says, I don't like this person. But it's usually because it reminds you of someone that rubbed you the wrong way or did something to you. So now this experience comes back again with the feelings, and you don't like that person without knowing them. When you get to know them, you say, oh, I wonder why I didn't like you. But it was because the amygdala was at work, right? When you can let go, you experience anxiety when you're in the presence of that person, or when you're in a similar context with the person who has hurt you before. Okay? You get angry or perturbed when the person's name is mentioned. Sometimes people get what we call tongue-tied, when they lose speech or memory. When you see the person, you don't know what to do because those feelings come up again, and it blocks everything else that you were thinking. And you're back in that mode of when that person hurt you. For some people, they actually get headaches or other bodily pains when you anticipate seeing or coming in contact with the person. For example, I had a client who had to go to her ex-boyfriend's sister wedding, and she thought that she would see the guy there with his new wife, and she wanted to go to support her sister-in-law. But as they got closer to the wedding, the headaches came, the migraines came, she couldn't go to the wedding. And once we deciphered it, it was the fear and anxiety with seeing someone who had hurt her before and she couldn't let it go. So that energy manifested where it denied her a good time. It denied her being in support of her ex-sister-in-law because she was holding on to these feelings that about someone that she could not let go. So it's not an easy process, and we say let it go, but it's a difficult thing to do. And we talk a little bit more about that. When is it difficult to let go? When things happen to you at specific phases or stages in your life, right? And all of us can remember a situation in childhood that happened to you or someone else at that significant developmental stage, especially around puberty. Research says that by puberty, our personalities are solidified, and it takes something really traumatic, crucial happening to have that change. So if you go back in your childhood, you will remember with lots of emotions, your first whippings, your first fights in school, your first love and loss, your first kiss, your first sexual experiences. Those are things that are painted on our memories because with those events comes so much emotion. Your first disappointment. And it's because it's happening in specific developmental stages that Freud, who's not the father of psychology, talked about things that happen in childhood, affects us for the rest of our lives. Well, in specific phases, it's very difficult to forget. So what does that look like? For people who have been hurt or damaged or abused in childhood or in puberty, early adulthood, sometimes it's not accepting life on life's terms, experiencing disappointments in yourself. You keep comparing yourself to others and you're never as good as, and it creates problems later in life. When you've been hurt in specific phases and you can't let go, you tend to live in the past. We talk about being stuck or feeling stuck. Wondering what could have been if I had only done such and such, maybe this would not have happened, and you live a life of disappointment, and that's not good. Right? We recreate the event and we suffer each and every time the memory comes up, which is what PTSD is like. But not only that, you remember things that really didn't happen because you were so traumatized. So when that emotion comes up and it's anger, you add angry words or scenes to the experience. And some of it is the emotions that are creating those memories, not the memory itself. And that's what lawyers know and they depend on. So when they question you about stuff that happens, you're going on emotion because it happened to you. And they ask questions like, during the assault, was the person wearing a green t-shirt or red t-shirt? Of course, you're angry, you're upset, you're being abused, you don't remember the colored t-shirt. And then they say, well, in the statement that you talked about, you said red, why are you saying green now? Right? So we get so caught up in the emotions that sometimes they call it false memories. The emotions create things that did or did not happen. So when you remember your breakup with a friend, you remember things that probably the person didn't say because you interpreted a look, you interpreted something to be more than the person said or did, but that becomes stored as your memory. So it's very, very difficult to remember the thing as it happened when your emotions come into play. So people say things like, there are three sides to a story. Yes, there are, because your emotion is going to be one side. The thing that actually happened is going to be one part of it. And then someone who's observing is going to have a whole different scenario of what's going on. So living in fear that the incident can happen again, even though there's no evidence that it could is one of the things that happens when we can't let go. Okay? Because we're holding on to it because it would happen again. And if it happens again, we'll know how to deal with it. And then, so we live a life of expectancy, but a life of anxiety and fear, because you're thinking that this could happen again and you're trying not to let it happen, right? When is it difficult to let go of things? And many people could probably identify with this. When you have invested time and money in something and you would rather be in distress than let it go. Because you spend so much time on this, I can't give it up now. Or you want it because you don't want someone else to have it. You really don't want it, but the thought that somebody else is going to have it, you're holding on. Okay? Sometimes the thing that you're holding on to brings you joy, but it can also bring you pain, and you cannot tell the difference. So you want a new car, a Mercedes, because your friend who makes less money than you has one, and why not? And you know, you're catching hell to pay for it, and it makes you look good, but it also brings you pain because you really can't afford it. But you're holding on to it because you can't let it go. Okay? Sometimes it's difficult to let things go when others tell you it is wrong for you. And it's usually when people tell you you shouldn't have something that you want it more, so you hold on. Okay? Or it feeds your ego and gives you a certain status, you know, like a big house or a nice car. Or you think it was worth the pain and you've spent too much time, too much emotions acquiring it, and now you can't let it go. And you hear people say this about relationships. Why are you in that awful relationship? Well, I put in a lot of time and effort in that, and I've spent a lot of money, and now I can't let it go, but you prefer to live in misery. So these are decisions that we make when we hold on to things that we should let go, and it takes us, you know, outside of ourselves. So we come to the neuro part again, where letting go is a cognitive process. It's not, people say, oh, let it go, and think that you can just kind of dismiss it and it comes out of your mind. No. This process includes a function called executive functioning, right? And executive functioning includes things like adaptable or flexible thinking, that you can switch. When something is not working, you can switch to something that works, that you are able to consider other options. And that's called flexible or adaptable thinking. Executive functioning involves planning for tomorrow, planning for today, you know, what would be done, in what order it would be done. It involves organizing material. It involves self-monitoring, kind of taking a kind of census of where we are, self-assessment. You know, this is the issue, this is where I am in it. I can choose to go A, B, or C. I can choose some options, but it's a conscious process that you're monitoring to see where you are and to see where you need to go. It also involves utilizing your self-control, but it involves a lot of memory. That same amygdala and hippocampus we talked about, working memory, knowing that, understanding that what you remember may not what it had been, right? That there may be some false memories in there too because of the emotions, right? Executive functioning involves time management, being able to see where you are in time and how closely you monitor and organize your time to get the stuff done. So when we talk about executive functioning, we're talking about, people look at it as the thing that separates us from other species, that makes us uniquely humans. Let's see, some animals may have executive functioning, but we are humans because we have this better than anybody else on our planet. That we can engage in this higher order reasoning, executive functioning that gets us through each day. So for people who have brain damage or who were born with certain developmental disabilities, the executive functioning is not as effective as other people. We tend to talk about intelligence. We're not necessarily talking about intelligence in terms of how smart you are, but how you utilize the processes to get you from one day to the next. Okay. And that's why we talk about it's the most challenging of human behavior that is deemed to be essential to life. And once you can engage in these things, you can be flexible, you can self-monitor, you know when to control, you know what to do when, you have memory about what's happening and how to move on from there. This is what makes us be better able to function than some other people. So what does letting go look like? We talk about being able to let go, how easy it is. What does that look like? If it involves executive functioning, if it involves, these structures in the brain working or not working. Okay. So let me go back. I skipped. Giving yourself, when you let go, if we truly let go, giving yourself the opportunity to grieve the thing that you're giving up, okay? That's part of letting go. Being able to grieve, knowing that it's gone, it's not coming back, you don't want it back, it wasn't good for you. It could be a person, it could be a thing, it could be a situation, but being able to grieve the loss, drain that energy, get renewed and move on, that's part of letting go, okay? It involves that flexible thinking, finding new ways to conceptualize old thoughts and ideas, learning new decision-making strategies. So we talked about flexible thinking as part of the executive functioning, finding new ways to conceptualize old thoughts. So that anger that you had towards a person, the memories you had where you talked, you remember what was not said, you change the words of the things that was said, you have to be able to say, you know what, in the heat of the moment, I said some things that I shouldn't have said. The person said some things, they really didn't mean it. They've shown me since then that, there's another way to go. It's really changing the way you think about things to change the way you feel about things. But you have to be flexible enough to do that. Sometimes people are so stuck that they can't switch the way they think about things. They can't see other people's point of views, so they hold on and they never get better. And the behaviors never change, and they never change because it's difficult to let go, to see that there are other options, that there's not just one way to do something. And that's flexible thinking, to the ability to switch, to find new ways to think about all things. Okay? Sometimes in letting go, you have to solve conflicts. You have to mend relationships. You have to apologize, say you're sorry, which is very hard for a lot of people, including myself. You sometimes letting go means giving up relationships because they weren't good for you. Okay? Giving up things, becoming unstuck from a previous phase of development where things went wrong, and you're stuck in that stage and you never grow into adulthood because you're stuck in that childhood phase about something. Letting go means unsticking yourself sometimes, having to go back to someone and say, you know what, now that I think about the situation, it seems really silly. I'm sorry. It took so long. People don't speak to each other. Siblings don't speak to each other for years, 20 years plus. And then somebody dies, and then somebody is crying and all bent about it. But, you weren't flexible enough to switch the way you thought about things back then, to say you're sorry and to want to move on. Letting go looks like having faith that you're going to be okay if you let go. You may think you need a person or thing, but you can survive without it, and get into that understanding, that self-assessment, that self-monitoring, that, hey, I'll be okay in spite of. Letting go also looks like trusting that others, the universe, support you, and that you have people who are like-minded, who will support you and maybe think like you, and that you will be successful. So it's okay to let go. Letting go also looks like giving up control to a power greater than yourself. We're not in charge of anything. We should know that by now. We're not in charge of a whole lot, because the wind blows, the rain comes, stuff happens, a storm, and everything we thought was important is no longer. And we understand that we do not have control over the universe, that there is a power greater than ourselves. So letting go involves all of that, but it is, as we talked about before, executive functioning. You have to plan to let go, right? You have to monitor where you are in a situation. You have to exercise some self-control. You have to really look into your memory, and you remember the feelings, how the person made you feel, but you also have to remember what they were saying. Maybe they were right at the time, or maybe they were wrong, but so what? It's been years. Why are you still holding on to it? You have to organize behavior now to act differently. And you have to, most of all, want to be flexible. So letting go is a difficult brain process that involves executive functioning, and it's not the easiest thing to do. So how do we do it? Current research shows that when one truly forgives, the brain structure changes and the chemical changes. So they've been doing fMRI studies where they have people engage in different scenarios or visualize different scenarios and see what happens. We know that when we hold on to stuff and we're angry, we produce the stress hormones, more cortisol, more epinephrine. We're ready for fight or flight. That increase in blood pressure and all of that changes our system. Okay. But when you let go and you don't have to hold on to that thing, it doesn't bring that negative energy. The amygdala is not being overworked. It's not sending information to the stomach for digestion. It's not sending information to the heart about increasing heart rate. It's not sending information about increasing blood pressure. The brain structures relax. You tend to stop producing all that cortisol. And you know what happens with a lot of people with stress? What happens? You eat. Some people don't eat when they're stressed. Some people eat more, and eat more of the wrong types of food, fatty foods, because it makes us feel good, because now we have to feed that emotion. Okay. So when one truly forgives, the brain structure changes, your hormones change, the neurochemicals that run the brain changes, and it shows sometimes in your body. You see people and you say, oh, you look 10 years younger. What happened, right? And they may tell you they shed some pounds, yes, but they also shed some things that they were carrying around, that baggage, those feelings, those negative emotions, because they were angry at someone, they had a grudge against someone. Once you truly forgive, now there's a question mark after forget. Do we really forget? No. We don't forget because the amygdala working with the hippocampus make sure we don't forget, but we can be engaged in the process of changing the emotions. Okay. Forgiving others. When you let go, you can forgive others, but you can also and not allow them to control your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, but you can also forgive yourself for letting them do that to you. You would not be harboring negative thoughts and feelings towards a person, thing, or phase that hurt you, or stage in your life that you were hurt. When you truly forgive or you truly let go, you know, you don't get that feeling in your gut every time you hear the person's name, every time you see that person. You don't, you know, the stomach doesn't start growling, or you start getting upset, or the headache comes on. You're releasing that negative energy. When you let go, you release the need for revenge or getting back. And that's a big one, because when we hurt, we want to hurt others too. As they say, damage people, okay? And when someone hurts you, it's human nature to wish that they could be hurt just as much or more than you. You know, you want them to feel the pain. So letting go releases the need for revenge or getting back. I'll tell you a story. I was working with an organization that the person who owned the organization didn't pay everybody for about a year. There was always an excuse why we couldn't get paid. And people went homeless, people lost their apartments, people who that was their main job just couldn't function, because for a whole year, every month was like, you're going to get paid, you're going to get paid. In the meantime, she was buying Mercedes-Benz and living large. And I used to say all the time, I used to say, God, please help me not to see this lady, because if I see her in the streets anyway, I'm going to beat her. I don't care if I go to jail. I don't care how professional I'm supposed to be. I'm going to beat this lady. You know, and I haven't seen her in about 15 years, but that anger stayed with me for a long time. And I had an opportunity where I was going to be able to see her, and I had to really pray about it and release the need for revenge and getting back. And it felt like 10 pounds had gotten off my back, because, you know, when you hold that kind of energy for someone who's hurt you, it consumes you. So I had to decide whether I wanted to be consumed by somebody else, and I had to release the need for revenge. But you know what? What kept me, I think, was believing that karma is real. And what goes around definitely comes around. You know, you don't have to go around wishing people bad, or wishing that the universe, or wishing that something will happen to them, because the universe just really takes care of stuff. Karma is real. So letting go, how do we engage in this difficult process? Because it's not like, you know, let it go and, you know, move on. People say that all the time, but it's a difficult process. There are several things that would help, you know. I put psychotherapy, psychospiritual therapy, whatever, letting someone help you look at the situation realistically, objectively, look at the pros and cons. What will it take to keep holding on? What will it take to let go? How do you feel about it? That's what therapy does. You know, it puts you in a space where you can be flexible and explore the options and decide, is this hurting me or helping me? Is it better to let go? And that's what therapy does, whether it's psychotherapy, whether it's spiritual therapy, any of the above. Okay. Sometimes people engage in rituals, like you hear, leave your burdens down by the riverside. So I've taken clients to the water, do water therapy, walk along the river. There's some herbal baths, spiritual baths that people do that helps them release the negative energy that soaks into the system, helps them relax, helps them to think about things in a different way. There's a lot of research now on psilocybin, which is a hallucinogen that they put you under, and you go through the trauma, and people sit with you and talk you through it. And you know, the celebrities are doing it now. A lot of people are doing it. They go into other countries to do it. But again, it's to help people to release the negative energy. That's the way people want to go. Massage therapies, and also like Reiki. Again, it's about the releasing of negative energy physically, mentally, spiritually. Meditational yoga also works for a lot of people to help them release and let go, see yourself in a different light, in a different sphere, transcend, so you can release some of those negative energies. For some people, fire rituals, also write letters, burn it, watch the energy, go in the flames, dance therapies, exercise, going to the gym, working it out. And it's all meant to get the brain to work in sync, the amygdala and the hippocampus and the heart and the pancreas and the spleen and all these organs that producing the liver that produces the cortisol and these negative, I shouldn't say negative hormones, but these hormones that affect us sometimes in a negative way. It's about releasing and letting go. Some people have the ability to just dismiss it and it's gone. And some people have to work a little harder at getting the brain in sync and getting things together so they can release, so that they don't take this negative energy to change into PTSD, depression, anxiety, other negative, what we call the negative emotions, that makes life miserable. So should we let go? Yes. Some people say let go and let God. Yes. Release any which way you can. And sometimes that involves going through the negative to get to the positive, like grieving over the losses, recognizing that it is a loss, but it's okay, you're still here, and getting the motivation and the energy to move on. So does letting go need divine intervention? Yes, sometimes a lot of it. And everything else that you can do to let go, because you're doing yourself a disservice when we hold on to things that we should have let go a long time ago. So that's the end of the presentation about letting go.
All right, thank you for that wonderful, very informative presentation and helping us to understand how our brain takes in experiences and how we process and register things that we go through. I know that has generated many questions to everyone in the chat, in the audience. So we are asking if you have questions for Nana, Dr. Asiedu, to please type those in the Q&A box. And we're going to give you some time to do that. Nana, while they are typing their questions in the Q&A box, a question did come through on how someone could contact you. Do you have an email address or a way people can contact you that you can place in the chat?
Sure. I gotta look up my, sure. I'll put it in the chat.
Wonderful. All right. So we'll give you a moment. Go ahead and place that in the chat. But yeah, so everyone is saying, very insightful presentation. Definitely insightful.
Seven.
All right. So olewisjack7@gmail.com. That's OLEWISJACK, the number 7@gmail.com. That's for anyone who is listening just via audio. And Nana, we're going to go ahead and start with
Questions?
some questions. So the first is from Arnold. Arnold asks, what actions or steps would you suggest I take in the process of engaging in the healing and lifting of spirits of middle school youth, short of earning a doctorate and beginning a practice as a clinical psychologist? LOL, so a little joke for that. But working with youth, what can we do?
In terms of letting go, or just in general?
It seems like in the general process of just healing,
Okay.
lifting their spirits. So I guess you could take that kind of how you want. If you think about
Okay.
society and what our youth are
Mhm.
facing,
Yeah.
and a lot of our youth do face trauma. How do
Mhm.
we begin to help them with their healing process?
Getting them to talk, or not talking at them. Right now, I'm involved with a group in Trinidad. They're incarcerated youth between the ages of 12 and 20, I think. And some of them will be released. Some of them are waiting. They've had such heinous crimes that they're waiting to go what we call big people jail. So I'm working with that group, and during the pandemic, we were doing virtual stuff with them, and lectures, and that doesn't work. The youth want to know that you understand them. So sitting among them, eating with them, trying to find out, who they are, and where they are from, and what makes them tick, and what they have and what they don't have in their lives, and just being heard. Once they find out that they're being heard, then they start to listen to you. Okay, so not preaching to them per se, but truly listening. What's your home like? What do you need? What resources do you have? What resources you don't have? What you think could make life better? And once they realize that they have an ear, then if they have negative thoughts, you probably help them rephrase some of those things that they're thinking, some of the ways that they're feeling, but just getting an understanding, because they have experiences too. And of course, that amygdala is at work, coming back to the letting go, and they have emotions that people have either pushed aside, or not have them focus on, or you're too young to think about that or to talk about that. They really want to be heard. And once you can get their ear, then you can do some other things with them. But it starts early. These days it's not middle school. These days you have to start with elementary school, start talking to them, molding them. Not everyone has two parents at home, and some who have two parents at home, the parents are working, so they're really not there to talk with the kids. And when you think about school, they spend 8 hours a day with you. They're your children, and you have to treat them like yours in terms of discipline and everything else. My students know, I tell them, my name is Dr. Jack, and I'm going to jack you up. And everybody says, she's Dr. Jack, she's going to jack you up, but she's going to do it with love. And I do it all the time, so that I keep them on the straight and narrow. It's hard, but, just being there for them, and willing to appreciate where they're coming from.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Amos asked, how does one deal with epigenetic trauma from the perspective that you're speaking of?
One of the things I wanted to talk about, and I forgot, and I'm glad there's that question. There's something called, Carl Jung, the psychologist, called the collective unconscious. And there's some things that we inherit that we don't even know that we've inherited from, who went before us. So it's not just we talk about the genes and the genetic makeup, the thoughts and emotions. We inherit that too. if you think about people who are scared of snakes, they've never encountered a snake, will probably never encountered one, but they're scared of it because their parent was scared of it, you know, generations before them, and that has been handed down. And people talk about generational curses. It's not so much of a curse, but there are things that we walk with and are there. And if we don't talk about it, if we don't address it, we definitely will not, you know that it's something that we need to address. And part of what we don't do is talking to, it used to happen a long time ago. Now everybody's into computer and texting and Instagram and all this stuff. But sitting down with the elders and saying, what was an issue in your time? What was an issue? You'd be surprised to hear that some of the same things are issues for you too. And it's been handed down from generation to generation, and no one talked about it. No one talked about the fact that sexual abuse or incest was an issue back then, and it's still an issue now, you know. So it's talking with the older folks, talking with our kids, letting them know, you know, of our history, you know, something of our background. When I was growing up, this happened to me. When you know, we don't talk about those things often enough. So our children see us as perfect. Oh, you didn't do no wrong when you were growing. Oh, yes, we did. We did all kinds of stuff. But you have to talk about those generational things that are sometimes difficult. And even the grudges that you hold on, you know, why so-and-so don't, auntie so-and-so don't come around. Yeah, because, you know, we're always fighting and we're holding stuff against each other. And the kids are seeing that behavior. So we have to be able to communication without the texting, without the email, really old-fashioned ways, sitting and talking. We have to go back to some of those old-fashioned ways of being able to see someone when they're angry, know what anger looks like, know how to resolve conflict without fussing and fighting and cussing. Just, you know, talking about, you know, you told me such and such, and I didn't feel good about that. And that's why I've been avoiding you, because, you know, I feel bad. You know, we don't do enough of that these days. So we have all the problems we have, and we don't know, children don't know how to deal with conflict because we don't have those discussions and teach them how to deal with it.
Awesome. Definitely something that I think we need to look more into is how to resolve conflict, because that's definitely something that I've seen over the years to be a big issue, and that creates more issues when we don't know how to deal with conflict and create even more problems. But continuing on with our Q&A, AJ asks, it seems as though revenge feels related to having hope. Could you explain more about what revenge is?
Revenge to me is when someone hurts you and you want them to hurt as much as you're hurting or more. You want to get back, right? And that thought of getting back, if that is channeling all the time, then that guides your behavior. So when you see the person that you want to get revenge with, you think about, how can I get to that person? Sometimes it's a word, sometimes it's a behavior, sometimes it's a look, but you want the person to know, I am angry with you, or I'm disappointed in you, or I don't like you, or whatever. I want you to know, and I want you to know that I'm doing something back to you, right? That's my definition of revenge. Does that kind of touch base with what the person is thinking about? That was the first part. What was my definition of revenge? You know, I want to get back because I want you to hurt as much as I'm hurting or more, right?
So the person was, well, I think that's it. They were asking, what is revenge? They were connecting revenge with hope. But they were asking how would you define revenge? And I think you gave a...
No, the part I'm having problems with is to hope. Is the hope that now the person is going to be feeling bad, doing bad. Is the hope a positive thing or it's a negative thing? How
Yes.
is the revenge connected to hope? I don't see, when you think about hope, at least I think about positive, hope that things will get better, that I'll be able to let go, that we'll have a better relationship. But if I'm thinking about revenge, it ain't no better relationship. I'm thinking about how I could destroy you, how I could do something to you that you'll be hurting. Emotionally, spiritually, physically, something.
Yeah, so thank you for making that distinction. And hopefully the person who asked that question could think about that relationship between revenge and the connotation of the term hope. Okay, our next question. How do you deal with the hurt in the process of letting go? This is an area that I struggle with. That's coming from an anonymous attendee.
Right. It's an area I struggle with too. Because we have to look at why we hold on to things, right? We hold on to things. If you have bothered me, you have hurt me in some way, and I want to be able to avoid you, and I want to have an excuse of not dealing with you, I'm going to hold on to that thing. And every time I see you, or I hear your name, or someone talks about you, that feeling is going to come up in my gut. I'm going to get angry. I'm going to sweat. I'm going to do some things. And it keeps me from having a relationship with you. See? So we have to look at why we're holding on. Is it because we don't want to forget that we don't want a relationship? And if we don't want a relationship, just let's say, you know what? You've hurt me to the core. I really don't want to have to deal with you. So I'm going to have to let this go. And in letting this go means I'm going to have to let you go, but I'm not going to hold on to that energy. You see, sometimes you have to make that distinction. Do I want to let the person go, or I want to let the thing go? Now, if you want to let the thing go and have a relationship, then you're going to work on either saying sorry, apologizing, hearing the person's side, being flexible. You're going to work on those things. But if you want to let the person go, right, then you're going to say, you know what, you hurt me. I don't think I want a relationship with you because I don't ever want to feel like this again. So let's end this friendship, or let's end this, whatever the relationship is. So sometimes we have to make a distinction. Is it worth holding on to it and losing a relationship, or do you just want to lose everything? And it's okay. There are many people that I know that I don't want to have a relationship with anymore, and I don't feel bad about it. So I was able to let the thing go because I was able to let the person go too. And decided in the long run, I want to take care of me. I want me to be better, but I can be better around you. So it's okay. I can let all of that go, release all that energy, you too. So it's not that you don't exist for me. It's just that the relationship doesn't exist, and that's okay if you're okay with that. So you have to decide, you want the relationship, you want the thing, you want the whole package, then that's work. If you want the whole package, you're going to have to work on the relationship, on sitting with the person, or maybe getting therapy with the person, depending on who it is, and letting them know how you feel and seeing if there's something to build on, or if it's better to let go. Sometimes it's better to let go. Don't hold on to stuff that brings you misery. Why are you doing that?
And I think that just to follow up on that, on the notion of the hurt or the pain that one feels. I don't know if the person who asked this question is suggesting that that hurt at some point disappears, so to speak, because energy is energy, and they say energy is never created or destroyed. It might take a different form. So is there a process to help transform that hurt? So that hurt, that pain is there. How can that feeling, how can that feeling shift? And I guess dealing and trying to deal with hurt. So even in the question, when one is asking, or when clients or people come to you and ask, I have this emotional pain, this emotional hurt, how do I deal with it? How do I get rid of it?
Right.
Is there really a getting rid of the hurt?
Right. And, you have to understand what you're getting rid of, right? So they usually people come, anger is the easiest emotion to identify because it's easy to get angry. So you come with an issue with someone, and it's pulling apart what what that energy is. Is it disappointment? And then we talk about why they're disappointed, how it became a disappointment, right? Is it a sadness? Is it, so when you pull apart those emotions, then you can deal with each one separately. And once you have kind of, unraveled, the box and take out all the clutter, then you see it for what it really is. But that takes some work. And that's where the flexibility, the self-monitoring, that's why, the title is a difficult executive functioning process, because it's not an easy thing to just, let it go. You have to get to the emotion and what is it really? Why am I resentful? Sometimes it's resentment. So identifying the emotion, seeing its components, understanding how it got to that part may help you to release certain aspects of it. It may not happen all at once, but once you deal with the resentment, then you deal with the disappointment, then you deal with the sadness, then you talk about all these emotions and you're releasing each time you're talking about it, and you're talking about the situations about, at some point it becomes, okay, there's nowhere else to feel now. I've gone through all of this, so it's time to let go. Because you understand now how you got there and why you got there.
Awesome, thank you. Another attendee is asking, what is happening in the brain when one can't remember traumatic events?
Sometimes the trauma is so much that it knocks it out. It knocks those, it's repression, Freud talks about it in terms of repressing things so that it doesn't come to the surface. So it's not that you forget, it's that you've been so traumatized that you push it down far enough that you don't have to live with that anxiety on a day-to-day basis. However, sometimes I can't say out of the blue, but sometimes something happens, and sometimes it's a little thing. It's a smell, it's a touch, it's seeing somebody, seeing something, and brings it all up again full-fledged. And you're like, where did that come from? I thought I had forgotten that. And I'm sure if all of us look into like our childhood, we remember things that, hey, I haven't thought about this in 50 years. Where did this come from? The brain is, they used to say we only use 10%. I think we use the whole brain, but it's such a wondrous thing that we're still exploring. We don't quite know why things happen. We can figure out a whole lot of things, but not everything. But they say everything that we experience is stored. Sometimes we need the correct cues to bring it forward, and sometimes if those cues never exist, you never remember that stuff, but it's there. We see these science fiction movies where they transfer people's memories into a robot or something, and you say, we'll never get to that. Well, we never know. But that process is happening now. Some things are so emotional that it knocks us out of commission, and we put it in a place where we hope just that we can survive now, that we never have to deal with it until something happens. And if you're lucky, it will never come up. But if you need to deal with it, something will trigger it and it will come up and you will be back there.
Okay, so keeping along those lines of the brain, Claudette asked, how does the ways to let go, for example, massage, you had a whole list of different ways to let go. Mm-hmm. How does those activities affect the brain so that we're able to let go? So what's happening when you're participating in such activities?
So you're generating well, I shouldn't say positive, but you're generating neurotransmitters and hormones that makes you feel better, puts you in a better space. See like how, okay, like if I wanted to be in a better space, see that scene that you're seeing now with the water, I'll be on an island somewhere that, you know, I'm getting good food, I'm getting nice clean air, I'm getting the ocean, I'm being able to shed, and it gives me more brain energy, more fluids, more, the neurotransmitters are mixing better, that would allow me to get into a space where I can think about things. Maybe I can meditate. I may try yoga. So it's putting the brain in a better space. I'm not producing a whole lot of cortisol, which is the worry hormone, which, you know, makes us sick because it's a fight or flight. So we're always at war with ourselves. So those things help us to relax, and once you relax, then the brain gets an opportunity to rejuvenate, your immune system kicks in, those restorative hormones kick in, and we're just in a better space. And that's why we go on vacations, hopefully. Yes, we go to party and have a good time, but some people go, when we talk about R&R, rest and relaxation, it's for our brain to regroup and for connections to be made with different areas of the brain, for those stress hormones to decrease and those positive neurotransmitters to increase in supply so that we can process differently. Because we are processing at 100% all the time. Even when we're dreaming, we're processing. So those activities put us in a different space. You know, when you exercise and you break down stuff, then you build back up. Right? And in the building back up, you maybe get better. Your muscles get stronger. Certain parts of your body get stronger in exercising. And it's the same thing with mental exercising. Yoga, going to a space, being able to transcend, being able to relax your body and have some control. You know, this is a personal example of not letting go. Somebody told me to go to do yoga, right? And it was the one with the chakras, and it was a real Middle Eastern person doing. And I could not relax. She tried everything. She had me put my feet in salt water and warm water, and she just tried everything, and my brain was going. I could it was the first time I was put out of any class. She says, "I can't deal with you," right? Because, you know, I'm always processing. So I had to train myself to slow down, to not have to think about so many things, to release some things so I can have space to relax. And sometimes, I'm sure it's not happening to just me, that we have so much stuff going on. We holding on to, we have to remember this, we have to remember that, we have to take care of this one and that one, that everything gets clouded, and now we can't release. So exercise, yoga, meditation, all those things help us to find that space where we can release. And it's really about releasing and being able to release the negative and take in the positive. And hopefully those things are positive for people.
Awesome. Here's a question, a more personal question that I think can perhaps benefit many of us in the audience. This attendee states, I judge myself to be my mother's reminder of my father's abuse / their marriage because I look just like him. So I get her sly remarks, the stories on repeat. How do I protect my spirit while being in a relationship with my mother? Side note, they divorced over 35 years ago, but she talks as if it was yesterday.
So your letting go is to have a conversation with your mother. I may look like my father, but I am not my father. And you need to let it go. I'm an adult, and I want you to treat me like an adult. And our relationship would be better if you don't see me. You can see my father in me because I look like him, but I'm not my father. So in this case, it's not the person who's asking the questions issue, it's the mother's issue. And part of the executive function is deciding, this is not my issue, this is hers. And she's preventing us from having a good relationship because she can let go, but I can. And that's a hard discussion. Maybe, need to have a third party there, maybe therapy, maybe family therapy, something, but it sounds like, and a lot of times we take up other people's baggage. It's not your issue, it's her issue. She can't see you for who you are because she keeps seeing the man that she divorced 30 years ago. And that's her problem. So your letting go is understanding that's her problem. And maybe help her to get some help to deal with it. But don't take it as yours, and you let that go.
Very good, very good, very powerful response. Thank you. Absolutely. Jewel asked, she says, excellent presentation. And what about trusting your intuition when you have a bad feeling about someone? What is the role of intuition?
This is, I'm going to answer you from a scientific viewpoint first. There's some current research out, and I can tell you, you can Google it, that the gut, what we talk about, gut has a brain of its own. So it's almost like we have two brains. We have a brain in our head, and then we have a brain in our gut. And that brain has hormones and neurotransmitters that are also processing. So when we get a feeling about something, it's a process that's going on. I can't say neurological because it's not in the head, but it's a process that's going on in our, this area, I guess what they call the chakra area or belly area. And you have this, we say the gut feeling, but it's processing that's going on between the heart and the head. And a lot of times your gut is true. It's like your extended, brain that is taking up cues from the environment and reading those cues in a particular way that makes you feel strongly about something. So when you have that gut feeling, something is going on, you need to stop and check it. You need to check the reality of it, see where you are, make that self-assessment, monitor, and say, you know what, now that I've assessed, this is where I need to go. See, some people get a gut feeling and just go with it, and it may work for them. But when you get that gut feeling, it's what you should be stepping back and saying, let me assess. I feel this way. Let me see what the facts are, what the information is. So now I can make a decision based on something very strongly that I'm feeling. And I may be right. And oftentimes your gut feeling is right? Especially when it involves people, because part of it too, so that was the physiological explanation. Part of it too is spiritual, where your spirit is picking up something from someone else's spirit. And if you're in tune with your spirit, then you know, hey, something ain't right here. Let me take a look. Either which way, you have to acknowledge that something is happening and then make a decision on what you're going to do about it. Sometimes your decision is going to be the right one, and sometimes it's going to be wrong because there's a lesson you need to learn from that, right? And then we say things like, I know I should have gone with my gut feelings, right? So next time you're going to trust your gut, right? But so there's a physiological part of it, and then there's a spiritual part of it where your spirit has felt something and is letting you know, hey, something is not quite right. I need you to do an assessment. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Thank you for bringing in both perspectives. Given your expertise, it definitely makes sense. Another personal question, audience member asked, thank you, Nana. They write, my mom died in 2001, and I have not forgiven my sister for her bad behavior during that time. How do I start? I am stuck. Thank you. That's their question.
So first thing, when you say bad, when the person has to figure out for themselves, when they say bad behavior, what does that mean? You know, so when they identify what bad behavior means to them, then again, that decision making, then it's an approach now, you know, that letting go of your ego or whatever, just to call your sister and say, hey, there's something I need to talk to you about. Okay. And then have a discussion, because when we're talking about death, we're talking about grieving, and a lot of people grieve. There's no right or wrong way, but some people just go to the extreme. Some people make very bad decisions. They do things that they shouldn't have done, right? And it's hard to forgive when you think it affects you and everybody else around you. So maybe in her grieving state, she said or did some things that was not kosher, as we say, didn't gel right with you. And because of your feelings at the time, it compounded the experience. Remember that amygdala kicks in. It took, you feel and you feel and you feel, and the feeling is exponential. And then, so your memory of the thing now is even more emotional and worse than maybe what even happened. So having a discussion about why the behavior, how she was feeling, or maybe she didn't feel supported or felt that she was alone in this, you know, death brings out the worst in people. Always, because of the finality of it. So a discussion with and I think that's what we avoid. That's why we hold on to things. We don't confront the people that we hold in things against and say, hey, this is how I felt. Because, you know, people don't like to be confronted. People don't like to see themselves in other people's eyes. But that's what letting go is, to be able to see yourself from someone else's point of view and decide, you know what? Yeah, this was bad. You know, I really had that behavior that I should not have done that. But she wouldn't know unless you talk to her. And if she's combative or argumentative, then you say, okay, well, that's how you see it. That's how I see it. You know, we agree to disagree, and that's it. You know.
Awesome. And, you know, a lot of these responses that you're sharing really speaks to the need to communicate. And sometimes communication can be so difficult.
Yeah.
And perhaps therapy is one way that can help us find ways and find the courage to not only communicate, but to know what we're communicating about. Right. As you stated, what was the bad behavior? What are the issues? So thank you for bringing that up. And that leads to this other question. BG asked, what happens when a traumatic event stunts the trajectory of one's life and one is unable to get back on track? And perhaps with that, perhaps a couple of solutions or a starting point to help them get back on track.
Right. See, and that's what PTSD is, right? It's a loop. Where something tragic happens and you replay it and you replay it and you replay it. And every time you play it, you don't even have to replay it anymore. Anything that reminds you of that, you react to the same way you would have reacted to the event that occurred, because you're so traumatized, because it hurts so much. And again, it's compounded, it's exponential by 1,000 times, right? So it's a conscious decision now, because now everything is tied up into the symptoms. If you look at the symptoms of PTSD, the nightmares, the dreams, the being unable to forgive yourself, the re-experiencing the things over and over, avoiding the things that reminds you of it. So it's a loop, and you keep in this loop, and you have to decide consciously, I want out. And with that, you're going to get some help, whether it's therapy, talking to your pastor, going to a spiritualist, whatever you think will help you, because obviously you can't do it by yourself. It's traumatic. Your spirit has been traumatized, and you would need help to get beyond that. So if this loop is going around in circles and it's been a year or more than a year, it's been years, then you obviously need help to deal with it. And seek that help and not be ashamed to get that help, because you want a better life and you don't want to be stuck in that situation, in that phase, and not live, because it's not living when you're stuck, it's existing. So get help if you have the motivation to want to change. Some people want to remember that the event, so it keeps them from relationship, it keeps them, you have to look at what being stuck does for you. You know, does it keep you from having to engage with people? Does it keep you from getting love or from giving love? Does, you know, what is it doing for you? And if you decide that it's not doing good things for you, then you have to make a decision. You have to be flexible enough now to think about, what resources do I have, or what resources do I need to get to bring about this change? Because the change is not going to happen on its own. You're going to have to do something to get it. And it usually starts with that self-assessment, that executive functioning, that self-assessment, that monitoring, that planning, that organizing. How am I going to get from point A to C? That involves B, but it involves work. And you have to do the work if you want change. There's no change without conflict. There's no change without work.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for your great responses. And I do want to encourage people in the audience to definitely reach out to Atei Asiedu. She is a psychologist, and I'm sure that there are tons of resources for us to get and seek therapy to really hone in and dig deep into some of the questions that are being asked. And here's another question that I think some people can relate to. So I'll go ahead and ask. This person asked, how to regain trust in a partner that had a sexual encounter outside the relationship. The person writes, now I'm always accusing and constantly draining myself, looking out to see if they are still going outside the relationship. This partner also doesn't share information if I ask questions or look to have open communication. When I ask them to let me know if they are still going outside the relationship, they don't answer, I guess. I have been in 3 past relationships with partners that also cheated. How to move about? They want to know, how do they move about in this? They write, I feel mentally crazy and a mess.
You know, if 3 times you've been in relationships that people have cheated, then you have to stop looking at the other people and start looking at yourself and saying, what am I attracting? You know, what am I settling for? What am I doing? That I keep attracting the same energy, right? Which is what you're doing, attracting the same energy of cheaters. And then once you find out it's a cheater, what do you do? Do you stay in that relationship? Do you not love yourself enough that you think that you need somebody to validate you all the time? You know, you have to start looking at you. What do you want? What don't you want? Make a list. I tell my clients, get a book, make a list. Decide the things you like, the things that you think will propel you, will help you to be better, and the things that you don't like, the things that need to change. Get in touch with yourself first, love yourself, and then you will be able to understand what you don't want from somebody else. Sometimes people want companionship and somebody to love more than they love themselves, because they don't want to be alone, so they stand for anything. And that's a very hard one when someone has hurt you by cheating on you, by going outside. You know, I tell people, and most people don't believe me, sex is the most spiritual thing that you'd ever do. Because it's the only action that you are invading somebody's body. No other behavior you do invades your body. And out of that relationship comes a life. If you're female and you get pregnant, you produce a life, you produce a spirit. So it's the most spiritual thing that you would do. So when someone violates that spiritual essence and goes outside the relationship, you feel all kinds of how. Physically unworthy, mentally, you start comparing yourself. What did I do wrong? Because the person has gone now and made contact with another spirit. And now you have to trust that that person is going to be there for you. And that's very hard. And it's very hard to let go. And that's why people have to go to couples therapy and a bunch of other things when that trust of intimacy is violated, when someone has gone outside of your spiritual, physical, emotional bond, and it's like a violation. So they have violated your trust, and now you have to trust it again. So you have to decide, how much work am I willing to put into this? Is the person willing to work on this? Have you explored the reasons why they've gone outside or wanted to go outside? And sometimes you have to make the decision, hey, let it go. Is it worth it to be miserable? And again, when I was going through the points, sometimes we hold on to things just because we don't want to be alone or we don't want someone else to have it. And you have to, what is your life worth? If the relationship is worth working on and the person is able to, sure. But what about you?
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. I think that the point of that, sometimes we have to look within ourselves as well. When we see patterns in our life, it's definitely an important point that we all can learn from. So thank you for whoever asked that question and gave us the opportunity to also learn from that experience. La will ask, when the brain suppresses an emotional traumatic event for a long time, would it be helpful to revisit the event in due time to release the event permanently?
If you can get in touch with the event, sure. Sometimes the brain suppresses it and it's like forgetting. You don't remember it, it never comes up, right? But it's not that it never comes up. Sometimes you get an inkling, a feeling out of the blue that something doesn't feel quite right, but you can't remember exactly why it is you're feeling that way, but you just know something is not quite right. But if it comes to consciousness enough that you can bring it up and address it so it will go away, that you can really release it, then I would suggest that you do that. So sometimes I say God knows what we need, right? So like when someone has been severely damaged in an accident where they put them in a coma so that the body can heal, right? So they have them comatose while the body heals, and then little by little they bring them so they can deal now. They can put mind and body and spirit together to work. It's the same thing sometimes where we forget things so that we can get stronger to deal with the things that we have forgotten. And when we are at that spiritual or emotional energy, now that we can deal with it, then it comes up again. So I call it the protective factor. Sometimes it's good to forget stuff while you gain the strength and energy so that when it does come up, now you have the resources to deal with it. So it depends on what it is. If it's there and it's affecting your behavior, it's affecting your relationships, definitely bring it up, talk about it, work on it, try to let it go, let it go. Sometimes it's so traumatic, like people who have been sexually abused in childhood, that's a big one. And it leads to all kinds of disorders because it's your spirit has been damaged. I always say that the next thing to murdering someone is to kill their spirit. And that's what happens when someone violates you sexually. And it takes a lot of work, a lot of prayers, whole lot of stuff for the person to live wholesome again and to trust that it wouldn't happen again and that they'll be taken care of.
Very powerful. Thank you for that, especially given that analogy to being in a coma and how doctors seek to heal a body and then how our spirits I guess the universe in a way almost seeks to protect us by not having us remember certain events until we're strong enough and ready to face it. So thank you for reminding us of that. Another question is AJ asks, how does letting go work in situations where the injury or abuse is ongoing and repetitive, such as the racism we experience daily?
That's hard to let go. That's a very good question because, you know, again, you have to decide. For me, let me give a personal example. There are some movies I can't watch. I can't watch 12 Years a Slave. There are things I was able to watch Harriet. There are things like, because I get angry and the anger is not mine. And when we talk about the collective unconscious, I know the anger is mine because it's at such a intensity that I can't really put my hands on it. So I know that I have not let go of generations of slavery and abuse and you know, and so that's why I said in the beginning, there's some things I'm still working on. When the abuse continues to happen, it's hard to let go because it's current. And sometimes the only way that it stops is when the person dies, the abuser dies. So the person who's experiencing the abuse wants something bad to happen to that person so that they can be released. And that's very powerful. So you, as an adult, can you get out of the abuse? Can you leave the space, the time, you know, can you extract yourself? But when you're in it, you can't let go of something that's happening to you all the time. So the thinking is, how do I get out? And that's part of the letting go, is to get out, stopping the abuse. Can you do that? So think about how many women and men have gone to jail because they have killed their abuser. In a fit of anger or rage, they say, today it's going to be it. I'm not doing this no more. I'm out of here, or you are out of here. And they've done something drastic. So I'm not saying to do something drastic, but in order to let go, you have to get out. Saw the movie Get Out? That horror movie, that was good. But you have to get out to be able to let go.
Awesome. Thinking about the brain, there's a question from Natalie about students and education. Do you have any strategies that we can use to help students with their working memory in the classroom?
Simple. It's not that simple. Reading is still fundamental. Now we have a lot of technology. We have AI, which is a big thing now. I can tell you, on a college level, students aren't reading, right? But think about the way books, you read and you turn pages. As you read, you're forming images, right? You're visualizing the thing. If you're reading a novel, you're formalizing the described fields and flowers and personalities and expressions, and you are getting it too. And that enhances our memory. So that's why we remember the good books, because we remember scenes, we remember things people say, we use some of the phrases people say. Reading is still very, very fundamental. So when we read, we increase our creative capacities, we increase our memory, because now we're bringing in things. And I always tell students, if it's a magazine, I don't care what it is, it could be a children's book, try to read, in addition to your schoolwork, read one book for pleasure, just for the sake of reading, and enjoy it. If you like books on trains, read about trains. If you like romance novels, read that too. I started reading back in those days. It used to be Mills and Boons. People who are my age will remember that. Mills and Boons, but I read. Every week I was reading. It increases your memory capacity, it increases your vocabulary, it increases your creativity, and just your passion for life when you read about people in other places. So, definitely read, and your memory will improve. You will see things from different perspectives and point of views. It's just so fundamental. When you read better, you write better. Hey, that's your education right there. Reading comprehension. And look at our kids. That's an issue. Everybody's on the internet, on Instagram, people are texting. Now I get essays with texting, and that's a zero, because you have to learn to read and write English. That's where we live, So, and I always tell my students, look how many people died for you to be able to read. So you have the privilege now. The library is free, use it. And have reading groups. I've been in a book club now 35 years. We meet once a month, we discuss one book a month, but we read, and I have to read. And sometimes I read 2 and 3. So, reading.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And our final question, someone wants to ask, do you have a book on this subject?
On the subject of letting go? Or
on this subject, or even any books that you may have, or writings or publications?
I can't think of any off the top of my head. One book that I've read and I'm rereading now, because I read it at different developmental stages in my life, is The Alchemist, by Paul Coelho. The Alchemist, that's the name of the book. There's I can give you, and we can put it on the site, some books on the neurology part of it. I like to simplify things, so I go to neuroscience for kids, and I look up memory functioning and how memory works, and how and it leads you to other things that you can look up and read about. But specific books in this area, no. Novels, yes, I can give you some novels that addresses some of the issues with when you hold on to things and the consequences of holding on.
All right. Okay, so I want to thank you again for such a wonderful presentation. Everyone in the chat, please take a moment to thank our presenter and share some additional thoughts about tonight's presentation. We want to invite you out next month to the next IKG Wisdom Wednesday, which will be July 19th, featuring Will Patterson, who will be speaking on pandemic education before, during, and after. So it's great that we just closed out on a topic about education and reading and comprehension. And next month, we will be discussing education throughout the pandemic. Before we officially close out, I do want to give you, Nana, Dr. Asiedu, any final words before we officially close out that you would like to leave our audience with?
Yes, if you can engage in the process of letting go, trust me, your life, you live longer, your organs are going to work better, because you'll stop producing all that stress hormones as cortisol, and you'll just be a better person. So when you can, and I am still working on it, on letting go, because there's some things you just want to hold on to because you want to be angry at that person, but it does not work. So I'm there to try, let go, let God.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And someone asked about a recording of this session. So our Wisdom Wednesday sessions are posted on the IKG YouTube page. You can go to IKG Cultural Resource Center on YouTube, and you will find our various Wisdom Wednesday recordings, and give this one a couple of days to be posted up, but you will be able to get it. Again, thank you all for coming out. Thank you for engaging tonight with such wonderful questions and being a part of our monthly series. Nana, Dr. Asiedu, thank you so much. We greatly enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you.
All right. Good night, everyone.
I'll be there next month.
Yes, yes, yes. Wonderful.
Good night, everybody.